We are live.
Awesome. What is going on, Rich Runner Nation? We are back for another live show. This is our second
Live.
of two shows this week. We've got John and I holding it down tonight. We are joined by two guests who I'm super excited to talk to. If you're just sitting around a campfire on a summer night and your friend asks you what the 10 biggest ultras are in the East Coast, your answer will include many of the races that these guys have run. Without further ado, Eric Anderson, Bobby Herrington, how are you guys?
Good, man. Good to be here.
What's up, man? Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
We're
coming on.
super excited to have you guys on. As always, we would like to kick things off with what everyone is drinking tonight. Eric, what are you drinking?
I have Pernicious by Wicked Weed. It's kind of their flagship IPA out of Asheville.
I'm black coffee. I'm about 10
man.
cups a day. I'm about 10 cups a day. So
8 o'clock at night, drinking your caffeine.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Not even decaf.
No, caffeinated. So
That's crazy. I can't do that after like 5 o'clock. Always I'm like at bed, but I still drink a good amount during the day. I got myself some more red wine this evening. We just had our wink delivery the other day, so busting that open.
And I'm still just drinking the casual Miller Lights, so holding it down for a couple more episodes, I'm sure. Obviously, Rich Runner Nation is a curious bunch of people they're looking at us right now, just wanting to know who you guys are. So let's just start off with that. Take 60 seconds, intro who you guys are. Eric, you can kick things off.
I guess an ultra runner, lives in Raleigh, North Carolina right now. I've been in North Carolina for about 11 years. Originally from Michigan, went to college in Toledo, left for a couple years and then came back and worked for a while before I moved to North Carolina. I'm a civil structural engineer by trade and father of two. So got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So they keep me pretty busy.
Awesome.
Pretty good guy. Yeah, so man, I'm originally from Florida, but been in North Carolina for almost 15 years. My wife and I, Allison, we got 3 boys. Love the outdoors, love to camp, love to run. That's really kind of what got me into ultra running. Just love being outdoors and in the mountains. And my wife's family had a house out in the mountains of Western North Carolina. So once we moved up here, we really kind of fell in love with the mountains. So we're about a couple hours from the mountains. I'm actually a pastor here in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super excited, like I said, to have you guys on. You guys are also really good friends. When did you guys meet? How did that connection form? It's always interesting when people meet others out on the trail and how friendships can sometimes become lifelong friends.
Yeah, we lived pretty close to one another in Greensboro, and I think just followed each other on Strava. And then Eric begged that he could pace me in my first 100K. I'm just kidding. But he reached out to me on Strava and said, "Hey, man, do you want to pace her?" I was running the URE 100K. I was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." So that was awesome. He came out there and paced me, and then we've been friends and running, and we've done some races and some awesome long runs together. Eric, I don't know what you'd add to that.
I mean, I really just wanted to run a loop at URE for free and get some cookies. So I was glad that you let me tag along.
Watch me shuffle it in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So obviously you said that you've run 100K, but let's take it back a little further than that. What was your guys' first run? What got you into running, and what was the appeal to kind of start running at some point in your life? Bobby, you can start this one off.
Yeah, so I always loved to like run and endurance type stuff, like growing up playing sports and stuff, but it wasn't until I was actually graduated college that my wife signed up for a duathlon. Man, I had put on a bunch of weight, after college. Was like, man, we need to get in shape. And so we did this duathlon, and I had always been a good runner. But the second, the duathlon's like run, bike, run, And the second part of the duathlon, this guy that was like, he must have been 70, just like smoked by me. And man, it just put this like fire in my soul. So as soon as I got done with the duathlon, I went and signed up for the Disney Marathon. This was like 15 years ago. And I was like, man, I gotta do it, So that's kind of what got me into it. And then really the last 6 years I've been trail mountain running. So that's kind of my journey to running.
Awesome. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, mine was similar. I mean, I always played a bunch of sports growing up. Played club soccer through college for 5 years. Then, got a desk job, sat on my butt, ate a bunch of food, got lazy, and actually started running at the gym on the treadmill, and then signed up for like a local 5K, and ran like a 24-minute 5K. But nobody who's 23 was running 5K, so I got an award. One of those ones where they basically give everybody that is in an award. So then it kind of got me motivated, and then I just did half marathon, and then I ran a lot. Never really ran a lot of races, and then did ultra when I moved to North Carolina. I think about 10 years ago was my first race.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. John's still with us. He's just gonna take care of some internet technical issues right now, so he'll be back on. I think you can still hear us.
Too many people streaming Tiger King, I guess.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. So obviously, you took those first steps to become a runner. What was the appeal to run an ultra? Obviously, even after running your first 5K or the marathon, it's kind of a big deal to most people. What was that step? Why'd you take that step to become, hey, I want to go run 30, 50 miles on a trail?
Mine was easy. I had a guy I worked with, and he said, I never thought to, I mean, I read Born to Run at some point, but I never really thought to look for local races. And I never really knew that people around me did ultra marathons. So a guy I worked with, he said they have a race out at Uwharrie, you can run at 20 miles or 40 miles. So I thought, well, I can run a marathon pretty easily. I'll go do the 20 miler. It's out and back, so the 40 miler start an hour earlier. So as you're finishing, you're seeing some of these people. You're passing some people going out, and you're passing some people that have turned around and coming back. And it wasn't all Dean Karnassus coming back. There was a lot of older people, heavy people. Just people you wouldn't expect that would be running 40 miles in a tough area. So as soon as I saw that, I get inspired by the back of the pack people just as much as the front of the pack people. So it was awesome. So I knew that once I did that, I was definitely hooked. So I signed up for the 40 miler the next year.
Did you sign up immediately after that race, or did you wait a couple months?
I mean, you have to wait for this one. It's like I think it sells out in like 5 minutes, doesn't it? It has for probably the last. I've done it 10 years. I think every year it sells out in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, so. That's crazy. Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, so for me, so I always heard the stories growing up of my dad swimming across the English Channel. He was in the special forces. And so I would just always hear these stories about, he swam for 12 hours and it's like I don't know, it's like a 30-mile swim or something. And so I always kind of had that in my mind, just like, man, how awesome that is. And man, so much adventure, most of us, just kind of work desk jobs and sit and look at our computers all day. So, when I got into trail running, I just kind of yearned for, something a little more, man, something to kind of mix it up, and then this is funny. I hadn't really remembered this till I'm just thinking about it right now, but I was running the trails right near my house where I kind of started trail running here in Greensboro. And I bumped into these two guys. They look like super fit, and I was like, man, what are you guys doing? They're like, man, we're training, we're training they were training for some 100-mile race. And they mentioned Western States. I hadn't heard of any of this stuff, And so after that, like a lot of you guys have probably done, I kind of went into the rabbit hole of, just like the videos online and podcasts and researching. And it's like, oh my gosh, like there's this world that exists. You could be like a normal runner and not even know like the ultra running world exists. So man, I just went deep into that, and it was, that was all she wrote.
And I still didn't, I had run Uwharrie 40 maybe 2 or 3 times, and I still didn't really know that there was other races around. I mean, I never thought to search for ultra sign up, I guess. And then I kind of stumbled on URP and started listening to a bunch of those podcasts. And then went and did Lake Sonoma, and then it was like over. I was like, I'm gonna do this a bunch.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Lake Sonoma in 2017 was your first race ultra outside of North Carolina.
Yeah. Yep.
So you ran 6 years of running ultras just in the one state. So that's crazy how.
Yeah, I'm basically one race director. I just didn't. I guess I never thought to look. Or
That's awesome though. But that also means that the North Carolina trail scene, it's got to be kind of special. Obviously, there's been some new races that have popped up in the recent years. There's some long time races that have some awesome history there. Take us through what the North Carolina trail scene is, maybe where you guys live, what it's like in the mountains, just the whole, for people that don't know what the scene's like. Whoever wants this one.
I'll say a little bit, Eric, and then you could sort of add
Yeah.
to it. I mean, across the state, I feel like people in North Carolina love to be outdoors. So, a lot of the bigger cities have pretty decent single track, like here where I'm at in Greensboro. There's probably 40, 50 miles of single track. The mountain bikers have done a lot of good stuff in building trails. Out in Western North Carolina, there's a lot of mountain runners, and man, the trails are just kind of epic. I don't really think people realize like how good the trails are and how good the mountain running is. I mean, we go kind of all over the place, Asheville, Brevard, but just taking Brevard as like an example, Brevard's got like 300 miles of single track. And that's, man, mountain running and just all sorts of different stuff. And in terms of the race scene, North Carolina is great, and there's races like all over the state, but I feel like some of the longer sort of mountain races are just kind of coming into sort of the scene. And a lot of the races in like Eric's mentioned, like the URI Mountain Run, that's probably one of the older runs in the state. I think it's 29 years old maybe, but
yeah.
there's not a lot of really like old races and like classic races, so
I mean, maybe like some like shut in run or something. That's not ultra. It's a 17-mile run. That's pretty old. I mean, that's like, I'm not sure, 20 years at least. But yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of Western North Carolina badass runners that don't really run races, or they might run one, Asheville race a year, and they have so many options of where they can go and routes that they can do that people just, they don't really care about running a race. They just want to go and be in the mountains and get after it.
Yeah, that's like the thing about like the North Carolina trail running scene. You'll have like you'll hear of these names and they don't like race, but they'll run like different like FKT routes like Pitchell and stuff like that. You'll hear these guys that are like super awesome. They literally don't race. They just, they just run in the mountains. So I guess it's kind of interesting in that way too.
Yeah, and in Raleigh, I'm just getting settled here, but we have the Umstead 100, and I think that's been around for quite a while. And so, we have people, they just go to Umstead they go every single weekend. That's where, everybody meets there, does their long run. They always do it at the same place, and they're completely content with just doing that and kind of training for one easy 100 a year, Yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's definitely rolling and, hard pack. No 100's an easy race, that's for sure.
I forget that one off the top of my head. How much vert does that one have over 100 miles?
Maybe
I like
8,000.
Yeah, 8 to 10 or something. I mean, there's nothing you would consider a climb, but there's definitely a lot of hills.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's kind of similar to like Mohican in Ohio and a couple.
Yeah,
other.
but it's on a bridle trail, so it's more on a gravel path. So it's not rugged. There's no rugged trail. They're fast times. Like I think Olivier LeBlanc, he's won 4 or 5 times, and he run in about 15 hours. But
Yeah.
he's smoking.
Yeah, that's absolutely moving. What is it? I mean, I guess it's got to be kind of tough mentally sometimes, like not knowing like what these people are gonna, if there are people that are gonna show up for these races from a competitive standpoint. You know what I mean? Like that they're gonna sign up for their one race, but how fit are they? Are they fitter because they only run one race a year, or are they just not that fit? I mean, Bobby has some pretty high finishes on his ultra sign up. What do you think about that? Do you think it helps to race more or less per year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, honestly. I mean, I think running volume is probably what helps the most. But like what you're saying about people showing up for races, I definitely think that's true. I mean, like Eric mentioned Shut-In, which is a real classic race up in Asheville that it's like a mountain race. It's like, I think it's 18 miles. But man, you'll have people that are like not really truly trail runners, show up to Shut-In and get top three or do really, really well.
Yeah, but they also have some, elite marathon people
Oh yeah.
in the Asheville area, or in Boone. So,
Yeah.
somebody that can run a 220 marathon comes over and
Yeah. Yeah. Like
blows the doors off us.
I haven't historically loved to like race a lot because I just like training and running more than racing, but I have
Agreed.
wanted to be more competitive over the last couple of years. So I've sort of forced myself to race more because I do think, especially if you're trying to race 100s like I am, like, man, there's such a steep learning curve. Like, man, you just like, you can't fake it. You got to go get that experience. So I've been kind of forced. Like I was planning on racing probably more races this year than ever, but it's not going to happen now.
Yeah.
Next year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys have run some pretty awesome races over the past couple of years. What is the one highlight from your ultra career up to this point?
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, mine's probably gonna be Bobby's low point, and it was 2018 Grindstone. I think Wesley, you were there, right?
Briefly.
For a little bit.
Briefly. I was there for 20 miles. Yeah, it was great.
That was my first 100, and the weather sucked, and it was so hot and foggy, and I was just fit for it. I went out at a reasonable pace, and I felt like I did pretty well. Till I had a little pity party maybe with about 20 miles to go when it got really hot, but I was able to rally and able to run the last 7-8 miles reasonably well and finish. I finished like 31st or 32nd, which for me out of 250 people on a race like that is pretty good. That's probably one of my best results. I felt like I didn't really have any low points. My nutrition went okay for being that hot. So
He dragged me all the way to the finish because we ran the last 50 miles together.
Yeah, probably 40, at least 40.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you finished the last 8 or so relatively strong, correct?
I mean, yeah, there's that big climb on Elliott's Knob. You have to go back up it, and then it just sucks. There's so many rocks. It's not that it's such a strong or hard climb, vertically challenging, but it's just slow. You can't really run it very well. So it sucks the life out of you.
For sure. Before we get into Bobby's answer here, what's one thing you learned from that race that really just kind of impacted you?
I mean, just kind of trust in your training. I think, you put in the work and, you can do it. And then also, you can be in a sucky spot. And I never really wanted to quit, but I definitely had like a pity party for myself for a few minutes and then, just get over it and start walking. And then once you start walking, it's crazy, but it comes back, and then you realize, your quads hurt, but your quads are going to hurt no matter if you're running down the hill or if you're hiking down the hill. So suck it up, keep going.
Awesome. Bobby?
Yeah, I think for me, probably the 2019 Grindstone. It was my third 100-mile race. And, my first 2 100-mile races were just like epically bad. I'm talking just horrible in terms of the way I felt.
Keep in mind, he beat me at Grindstone by like 15 minutes.
We finished
2018.
Together. So my first 2 races, like I just had like a ton of dizziness and stomach issues, and like I just felt like, man, I can run like hours faster is the way that I felt. And I'm just kind of inherently, this is the way I am. I'm just like competitive. So even like my first 100, I'm not telling anybody this, but I got in my mind like, man, I want to go win, or I want to get like top 3, and I'm like 9 hours from like what the winner did. And then even my second race was Grindstone with Eric. And it was just like, man, I just struggled, like the first 20, 30 miles were great. After that, I was like dizzy and wanting to throw up and just felt awful. So getting back to like your question, Grindstone last year was the first race where I felt like, like my nutrition and stuff actually didn't like hold me back. I felt like I was able to sort of run what I was kind of able to run. And that was just, I don't know. It was just, it was just a good feeling for me because I thought I could race a lot faster, but I had, kind of these doubts too of like, well, maybe you can't, maybe you're just like good at 50 Ks or 50 miles or whatever. So it was a bit of a confirmation, like, okay, I could do this.
Can I disagree with them?
Sure.
Yeah, chime in.
I mean, I totally, that didn't surprise me. I thought you were totally capable of running that time that you ran, and you were, I mean, obviously your nutrition and you came in a lot lighter for race weight and everything. It wasn't a surprise to me. But this year in February, the URI 40-mile race, he actually ran 5:57, which was the fastest time in the last 18 years. And there's been a few course reroutes of the trail, so it's hard to tell. But the only three people that run faster times are Courtney Campbell, Eric Clifton, and Mike Morton. You guys can go and look up their ultra sign up and be pretty shocked. I think Eric Clifton actually had the trail 100-mile world record at one point. So these guys are like studs. So
Thanks,
this race has
man.
been around for 29 years. So a lot of good people been through there and never ran sub-6. So it was for having run out there so much. The pace that he ran for 40 miles was bonkers.
For
So
sure.
you're going to tell me what was my best experience.
Yeah, I am.
I love it.
I gotta give you some perspective.
No, I mean, I was going to say that's definitely like, one of the fastest.
That might be your best result.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The Grindstone race though was more of just like okay, man,
Vindication.
yeah,
for
like
all your hard work.
I can run this way, I went out like super like fast, with like all the leaders and everything. We missed the very first turn like 3 miles into the race.
Yeah,
So that was
I remember.
awful. I mean, there was like 40 of us that missed the turn, but nothing, in terms of my times, like nothing could have said like, man, you need to be running like with the leaders. Cause the previous year I ran 26 hours. And then this last year I ran 20 hours and 45 minutes. So it was a little bit of like, okay, this is a bit of a gamble, but I just felt like, yeah, it paid off. And
I mean, that's what I love about those long races though, is, your fitness is only one piece of the puzzle. So if you can't get your nutrition and your stomach and your gear right, it doesn't matter how fit you are. I mean, I beat people that are way better runners than me all the time, but
yeah, like I've always felt like even when it didn't show in like the results, like my best like attribute in ultra running is like something with like the slow twitch, like muscle endurance, like I could really run at the end of the races.
Yeah.
If I don't have
Definitely.
some other issue that's like restricting me, so that's what was so cool about Grindstone. Like I felt like I was like on top of the world, like, I mean, there was one point, the last like 3 miles, I was running like 7-minute miles and I just felt like, man, I just feel like incredible, and that was it was such a crazy feeling. I came up behind 2 guys in the last like 3 miles. They looked at me like, man, what are you doing? One guy was standing like peeing next to the river and I came up behind him. He looked at me like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I remember reading a race report from one of the guys you passed, and he says some guy came by running a 5K and just like blew past me.
It's funny because he just stood there and just watched me keep going.
Yeah.
And the second guy passed like a mile from the finish. He like started running, and we were in like a foot race, and I was like, man, I can't do this much longer. Another like 30 seconds, I was just gonna stop, and then finally, like he stopped. I'm like, okay, I could kind of.
He wanted that Patagonia jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, you obviously you finished 5th at Grindstone, passing a bunch of people in the last couple miles there. Is it true that you have the Strava segment course record in the last 5 miles of that course?
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a billion people that have run it that like we're not on Strava or whatever. So, but for the people that are on Strava, yeah, I got the Strava record for whatever that last aid station is to the finish. I think it's like 5.2 miles.
That's incredible. That's kind of reminds me of Wardian the other day, just throwing down that 7-minute mile pace at like 260 miles. And I just don't know how the body can kind of take over and do some pretty incredible things late in races. It's cool to see. What was one thing you learned the most from that race? I mean, obviously it was a super successful race for you. You had a lot of things go right. What was your one takeaway leaving Grindstone?
Yeah, probably the big thing was I had really just like radically like changed the nutrition, and I was going on about half of the amount of calories, kind of being on like a higher fat diet. And man, that was just a lot easier on me and on my stomach and stuff. And I feel like I was able to race in a much more like minimal way. You know, like I wasn't wearing a pack or anything. I think there was just me and a couple other people that were like, man, I had a belt with a little water thing in it. That's it. Um, and so I didn't have to take as much calories, and I felt like my mind was so much more mentally sharp. Um, I think just with not I don't know, taking in as much of that stuff and kind of being more fat adapted. My wife, who's paced me for a number of races, she even said that like some of my other races, you know, like towards the end, I'm like almost like incoherent, you know, like Eric paced me my first 100 towards the end. I mean, I literally was like sleepwalking while running, you know, like barely even could keep my eyes open. And at the end of this race, I was just like, I mean, I felt like on top of the world in terms of just the energy level and like the mental clarity. So probably just the nutrition stuff is really kind of the biggest thing with that.
Yeah, so break that down, obviously, for someone that may not know what that diet consists of on a day-to-day basis and in training during the race. What are some of the foods you're eating in preparation, and what did you eat on race day?
Yeah, so for me, I had tried like all different types of eating, you know, like when I ran URI 100K, I was like trying out a vegan diet, and you know, I've done just kind of the normal diet. And then I just heard stuff about high fat diet in terms of like easing up on stomach issues and stuff. So that's why I was like, man, I might as well try it, because I feel like that's sort of my Achilles heel in terms of racing, the 100-mile races at least. And so um, it takes a couple months to sort of get adapted, you know, to kind of restrict those carbs, and your body eventually starts using fat for energy. And so you know, my diet is mainly take in healthy fats with, you know, some protein and limited carbohydrates. And then when I race, I'll take carbohydrates, simple sugars and stuff when racing. And so, man, your body, it's kind of like crack when you don't take it, and then you start taking it while you're racing. Like it just gives you, you know, like a boost you've never felt. And in these, you know, long ultras, your heart rate's actually not all that high. And so, if you can get your body to use some of the fat for energy, you actually just don't have to take in as many calories. So, you know, Grindstone, I was like 100 to 150 calories an hour probably.
And what are those pouches you take? Those they're like ketones or whatever.
Yeah.
Vespa, is that, or what is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, Vespa. It's like it's weird. It's made from some sort of bee something or a bee extract, but for people that are already on like a high fat diet, it helps kind of kick your body into gear in terms of burning. So like for the race, I took that before the race and then didn't take in any calories for like the first 90 minutes to get your body like, okay, man, we're not just going to have access to like simple sugars here. We got to be able to burn some fat. So that's the nutrition in the race is like what a normal person would do. You know, you're not like going around like eating fat in the race, because your stomach's not going to be able to handle that. Just normal gels and stuff, but just a lot less of them. You know, because you know, like trying to take in 300-400 calories an hour, you know, when you're running 100 miles through the night, like there's a point where the body's like, man, you stop. I don't want any more of this.
Yeah, you get behind too. Try and play catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It sounds like you've got your system locked down. You've seen that over your past couple of results. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten regarding long distance running, ultra running, trails in general?
Yeah, I'd say this is a super common one. Like, man, it doesn't always get worse. Um, that I mean, that's just so true. You know, a lot of times if you feel awful, it's like, man, there's probably a reason for that. Nutrition, something like that. You know, if you're starting to doubt yourself and go into that mental battle, it's like, man, you may just need to go eat like a candy bar or something. You know, to change your mind. Like, man, and the other thing is like, in terms of it doesn't always get worse, like it actually could get like a lot better. And if you know that, your mind has a way of like holding out hope, of like, man, I feel awful, but I know this thing can actually get turned around if I just kind of keep running. So I think for me, that's probably the main thing that I'm thinking of in certainly a 100-mile race.
Definitely. Eric, obviously you have almost 10 years experience now in ultra running. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I mean, I had picked similar to Bobby, but I had an honorable mention one that really helped me. I think when Bobby and I did that UARI 100K, I paced him. We hung out with Lee Connor for a while, and obviously you guys in Ohio know who he is. She's kind of a force of nature. She's a infectious personality. So got to know her a little bit, and then ran GDR and ran with her for a good bit. And she was just drinking goo Roctane, and she would take a Tums like every 3 or 4 hours. And I'm just I was I never heard of that. So she explained, you get kind of this stomach acid. Some people have more stomach acid than others, and it's just kind of a preventative thing where I started doing it. Just take a regular strength Tums, like every 4 hours. If you can put it before an aid station where you plan on eating a lot of food, it helps, instead of doing it as like retroactive after you kind of get already sick, where I think it probably doesn't help as much. So I've been doing that. I mean, anything over 50 mile or over, I'll take a Tums every like 4 hours. I think you get too much calcium, but I don't think your body absorbs it because you're pushing so much stuff through. So for me, that's been a help. And I very little stomach issues. That hasn't been my problem since I started doing that.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember seeing that, and it blew my mind, honestly, just hearing that answer, because I hadn't heard that before either. First time hearing that. And so you take it every 4 hours. Is it do you always plan it before an aid station, or is it just like?
No, if you can. I mean, like it depends on what you're doing, So like if I'm doing a 50 miler, I probably won't eat that much real food. I'll mostly do Roctane and goo and maybe like some honey stingers or stroop waffles or something like that. So all those are fairly easy for me to process, so I don't really do it. But if you're going to eat, like a quesadilla or some soup or something like, in these hundreds, lots of times you don't feel like, you can't force down 60 goos. So if or if you're going to eat, like a lot of people will eat a breakfast kind of meal and a lunch kind of meal and a dinner kind of meal, even in a race, just to kind of keep them going. So if you can plan it before you go into those, it'll help you.
Definitely. Kind of just bouncing off that question a little bit. What is your guys' favorite aid station food?
Mine's easy. Mine's pierogies. Like potato pierogies. I mean, it's like potatoes and mashed potatoes inside pasta. I mean, come on. It's pretty awesome.
That's a good one.
Man, I love the candy at the aid stations, but I've also been like burned by eating like too many Skittles and gummy bears and that sort of thing, So these days, for the most part, I'm just keep it like super, super simple. Tailwind and a gel every like 3 hours. So I try to stay away from. I'll eat some chips every now and again to get some of that sodium in.
If I had to guess, we'd never see the community bowl of M&Ms again.
Yeah, it's really tough, honestly.
Yeah,
gonna miss those personally. Obviously, I mean, that's such a good transition into our next topic here. With everything going on in the world right now involving COVID-19, what's your guys' mindset with training? Like obviously impacting everything, impacts life in general. It's affecting everything that's going on right now. How's it family wise? How's it training wise? Whole scenario. Whoever wants it.
Go ahead, Eric.
Now, for us, we've been lucky. I've worked from home for probably the last 5 or 6 years. So for me, like, that wasn't a huge transition. And my wife's work, they were pretty flexible with allowing her to work from home. So that's a big plus. But, we have two little ones that you can give them about 5 minutes on their own, and then they're climbing on top of the couch or jumping off of something. So our childcare went away. So we've been getting up about 5 in the morning and working until they wake up. And then I've been watching them in the mornings, I normally get to take them in the double stroller for a run, but man, that thing's hard, pushing 120 pounds worth of kid and stroller up some hills. And they say heat is the equivalent of elevation training, but I would say that double stroller probably does a pretty good job too. So, but you know, I mean, at the start of this, we were going into Hellbender, so it was. I mean, I was pretty worked, so it was taper time, and I think that helped a lot. You know, not being mentally, just knowing that I could back off and not have to worry about it. So I try. I mean, I probably run more than a lot of people throughout the year, just consistently, and mostly just mentally for me. It's a release. So, I mean, I've still been, luckily, I've been, you know, in North Carolina, we're still allowed to go out and run around the streets and do that kind of thing. A lot of our trails have closed, and I don't really think it's right to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to go to a trail at this point. I mean, that's not really the idea. So I've just been going out the front door and putzing around. We got a few areas around here that you can still get into where there's a lot of people don't know about. So I'll take them there a few times. But I mean, nobody's training for anything now, really. So, I mean, just do what you want to do what makes you happy, do what fits your family, you know, fits your job. I mean, I normally ran on lunch a lot, and that's pretty much out the window. So I try and go a little bit maybe after the kids go to sleep every once in a while, so I don't lose form and economy. But I don't know. It's cool. It's cool having my kids with me running. They're crack me up. You know, I mean, Bobby can tell you, but he's been biking with his kids, the same thing. You know, it's not ideal that they're home all the time for work, but it's pretty awesome when the kids are this age to be able to spend so much time with them that we normally wouldn't do. So, and that's been a blessing for us. We got a little woods behind our house and a nice yard, so they can go outside, and built a little trail for them, and it's been fun. They really like being outside, and the weather's been amazing here, so it's been great.
Yeah, it's great, man, to hear you're making the most of it, obviously, getting the kids out there. And I know a lot of people said like the best part about this blessing in disguise almost is spending more time with family and other people like that. So
yeah, I
it's
mean, we
great.
get everybody, you know, you'll see it, Wesley, when you get older, you know, like us wise men, we have more wisdom than you, but it means a lot, you know, like you get bogged down in your career and there's so much other stuff going on, you kind of lose track of a lot of the stuff that this is focusing everybody on, you know, reminding them. I mean, that's the one blessing in it, right?
For sure. With the training tip there, you might convince me to get a stroller and find 2 kids to scoop up if you're telling me it's just as good as heat training.
Don't you just, I wondered how you just don't do Rocky repeats on those stairs every day.
It's honestly just like too touristy for me. Like, it's just like, I mean, there's people everywhere. So even
everybody has to do it.
Even on like a day that like you're allowed to be outside and whatnot and doing your thing, people just everywhere. So I just avoid that as much as I can, but I have done it a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, here it's been crazy, you know, cause like, I mean, obviously everybody's seen it. They closed all our trails just because like, it was just nuts. I mean, all the parking lots are full and overflowed. Like Bobby's lucky their trails. I mean, I think they see some more local pressure maybe, but you know, Umstead, like here, just people come from all over and it's like they realized they could go outside or something. And like, you know, now if you tell them they got to be outside, maybe everybody goes inside. We'll see. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Bobby?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of start, you know, like I've tried to have a good perspective on all this, you know, like, man, we have no control over like the circumstances, you know, the facts of sort of just like what's going on, you know, but like we do have control over our thoughts about the facts, meaning like, man, I could see everything bad and negative about this, or, you know, I could think of the things that are sort of a blessing in disguise, you know, about this stuff, and just realize like even the idea of like sheltering in place and all these other things, they assume, they assume you have a house and you have a place to separate yourself from other people. And like, man, people that are in like abject poverty, like, man, they don't get to do some of these things. So like, man, even just our reality right now is very much a blessing compared to a lot of other people in the world. So I try to really have that sort of positive like mentality. And even, with my family, like we've kind of had this like joking rule, like, man, during this time, like we're not going to complain about anything. Like, okay, if you get coronavirus, you can complain. But until then, like, man, we're not going to complain because the kids are home, or we're not going to complain because the weather's bad or whatever. Like, man, a lot of people are going through like so much worse stuff right now. So, let's have a really like positive attitude. In terms of my training, I'm like Eric. It was kind of weird, like I was getting worn down because we were on the same race schedule. We were supposed to do Hellbender 100 last weekend. So when all this stuff really kind of went crazy here, I was kind of going into like a 3-week taper. So um, that was kind of nice, honestly, to not have to manage all the stress of coronavirus and changes with, I work at a church, all that stuff, with also trying to keep like high volume running. So I've been kind of chilling out the last 2 or 3 weeks, but now just kind of getting back into training. And, and a lot of the training I've tried to do over the last year is just sort of the idea of like, man, train the energy systems that are most furthest away from the type of race you're doing, the furthest away from a race. So like, you run a 100-mile mountain race, you need to be doing real high speed and efficiency type stuff. Um, and then the closer you get to the race, train the energy systems that are more specific to the specific race, So I've been really sort of working off of that. So probably just kind of jumping right back into that now, getting back into some real sort of efficiency type stuff to help with cadence and running form and that sort of thing. And then, when the races come at some point, whatever that race is going to be, jump into some more specific type training. I think for both of us, for Eric and myself, Eric has run higher mileage than I have, but I'm trying to put in more miles. I mean, I think ultimately, like, man, that's the thing that's going to enable you to, whenever that race is, hop into whatever sort of race if you're keeping that volume, in a good place. So I'm not too worried about it. When the world gets back to, I don't think it'll ever get back to normal, but when it gets back to the new normal, having just continued to run and get that consistency and volume in, I think that's the most important thing in terms of being able to compete.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing's crazy, because like 3 weeks ago, Aaron Saff, the race director for Hellbender, he's planning alternate routes and staggered starts, and then like nobody thought 3 weeks from then it would be like it is now, and that was just like such a silly idea. Like how could we, we were worried about that. Like that was everyone's biggest worry, and now all these small businesses, it just sucks. Like we're sitting here doing nothing because we can't go out and support these businesses. I mean, we've done takeout a few times, but I'm still not super comfortable with the idea of that. And it's just like, we're in North Carolina, we're shut down till the end of the month at least. So that was basically 2 months of no income for a lot of people.
It's crazy.
It's gonna start hitting mortgages and apartment rent and that kind of thing. It's gonna be hard. And the government, I mean, they have some ideas to help, but I don't know if that's gonna come quick enough for a lot of people. So just blessed to not be worried about that, at least.
Definitely. Bobby, jumping back in real quick to your answer here. You said that you do some kind of speed workout and stuff like that, gearing up to like a 100-mile race. What do those workouts look like for you, and how far out in advance are you doing those?
So this is very similar to like what Jason Koop talks about in his book about ultra running. Like the idea is like, man, if you're training for like the 400, you need to be doing stuff that's very specific to the 400 right before that race. Months out from that, you probably ought to be doing endurance type stuff because that's going to help with just a person's aerobic engine. So figuring out what that race is, and then training the training systems that you really don't need in that race, the furthest away, and then the closer you get. So like what I was doing going into Hellbender, I did a couple months of, 2 tempo workouts a week. So like a midweek tempo workout that's at, it's probably at 90%, max heart rate. you know, anywhere between like 5 and 10 miles. And then I was doing closer to like 10-mile tempos on the weekends, and trying to keep relatively high volume in that too. It's hard to train hard and have high volume at the same time. And then the closer I was getting to the race, like, man, you don't necessarily need to be doing tempo workouts, a couple weeks before a 100-mile mountain ultra. So I moved to more steady state workouts, which is just a little bit under a tempo. So a lot of the same distances, like a 5-mile steady state or 10-mile steady state, but not quite as hard as a tempo. So kind of an energy, getting closer to an energy type system that you would actually use in a 100-mile race. For me, it's been, when I first started hundreds, it was like, man, just go out there and slog out the miles, run all the miles at the same pace. And that's obviously, most people run their slow runs too fast and their fast runs too slow. So it's really just in the last couple of years that I've tried to really dive into some more like training philosophy. And, it's crazy, man. The faster you can go out and run a mile, the faster you can run a 100-mile mountain race. Like, it's just speed translates into any distance you're running, and especially somebody like me that didn't grow up like running competitively. I feel like it's even more important to train speed and efficiency because, you don't have that natural efficient running form from running 4 years of college or whatever. So I've really tried to focus on that over the last couple years.
I mean, obviously it's worked, right? I mean, his results show it. So, and I think I was of the mindset, just volume. And I probably ran like 10,000 miles over the last 3 years. So, but I'm at the point now where I'm seeing that, that doesn't work anymore, kind of like you stall out. So once I start ramping back up for training, I definitely have to incorporate some of that speed stuff. And, like he's saying, I probably run easier than a lot of people do a lot of the time too. So I think that's important because if you're doing high intensity and then your easy days are moderate, not only you're taxing your system, you're just risking injury. I think both of us have been fairly lucky with not dealing with that really at all. I mean, everybody deals with the niggles, but no like major setbacks.
Definitely. And kind of going off that, when training does resume for you guys, whenever that is, what are some of your goals moving forward in the rest of this year or early next year? What are some of the races you guys have in your bucket list? What excites you most with all that? Eric, you can start us off.
Well, I mean, I think for this year, I was optimistic of maybe doing Shawnee 100-miler, Mohican 100-miler, but I don't see that happening. If races come back around in the fall, I would like to do Michael's Shawnee 50-miler. That looks awesome. I mean, that's like 11,000 feet of gain, 50 miles. That's my jam. I would really like to do that. Hellgate again, if that happens, I'm definitely on board for that if Dr. Horton lets me in again. Next year, I'd like to do a different hard rock qualifier. So, maybe Mogollon Monster or Cascade Crest both look pretty cool to me. So my kids are getting old enough now that traveling to a destination race like that is more manageable. So, but I don't have any. I'm doing the Aravaipa 50K next week, virtual 50K. So,
Awesome.
Other than that, I have no races on the schedule.
We got some hellos in the chat. Crudely Tuttle says hi, Eric, and then Jerry Woods says hi, Eric and Bobby. So some fans are tuning in. And Tim Crow said Shawnee 100. What does he know that I don't?
Hey. I know Jeremy Peterson did the double Hellgate this year, so I'm sure you could talk to Michael and he would let you
I've been
there.
debating on doing that double Shawnee for a while now. It's on my bucket list, but hopefully one day that happens, but we'll see. It's up to Michael, I guess. Bobby, what are you gearing up for end of this year, early next year?
Yeah, so I'm still technically signed up for Hellbender. They moved it to November. I was really hoping this year, like with the race schedule I was wanting to do, was Hellbender in the spring, and then Grindstone in the fall, and then like JFK 50. That's obviously not going to happen. So I'm kind of thinking about, Grindstone, Hellbender back to back. They're 9 weeks apart. So trying to figure out, if I want to do that. Not sure if I'll do that or not. So in terms of long term, I mean, I think it's not really a goal so much, but I just like want to see like how much I can get out of myself in terms of like my ceiling for, the capacity to get faster and compete. And, um, so I mean, we all get older, and there's some point where there's like diminishing returns on additional training, but I don't feel like I've totally hit the ceiling of like what I could do. So really for the last 2 years, like what I'm doing is just like, man, trying to run the hardest 100-mile mountain races that I can have access to on the East Coast. And then like, man, when I get into the races everybody else wants to run, like Hard Rock and Western States and UTMB one day, like I'll be prepared, because I'm gonna have multiple 100-mile mountain races under my belt. So
Probably
that's kind
double
of,
digits by the time we get into those, at least.
yeah. So I mean, that's kind of my thing. I just want to see how I could compete at like the 100-mile mountain races. So that's kind of what I'm passionate about. So keep plugging away at that.
Definitely. Got a couple more hellos. Hi, Eric from Steven Anderson.
Yeah, that's my
And,
dad.
and then Kendall Weaver actually asked, Eric, are you planning on circling back to Hellbender?
No, I passed. It was a weird time when
Too close to Thanksgiving.
well, yeah, I mean, typically we go back to Michigan for Thanksgiving, which is like the weekend before, and after that race, I'm going to be a zombie for a few days for sure. So, and that was at the beginning of this coronavirus stuff, and I was set to do it in April, and I just mentally wasn't ready to commit to it in November. So
It's got a 1:30 a.m. start now too, which is the
yeah, I mean
craziest
that's
start
not,
time.
like that's another, I've done Hellgate, I've done the 1201, I've done Grindstone, I've done the 6 p.m. But I mean 1:30, it's just, and that's a race, Hellbender for me, like I'm 29, 30 hours would probably be a pretty good time. So that's just going to be, that'd be tough. If he circles it back into April, which I think he's looking at keeping it in the fall, if he moves it back in the spring, I'll do it. But no.
What's the point of the 1:30 a.m. start? Is Aaron?
Yeah, I think it's just
Mitchell State
yeah.
Park. I think there's some restrictions on when they got to be out of there. So like, we're starting, the slowest people got to be able to get through and still be on cutoff. So
yeah, I mean, this year it was gonna, or the race that just got canceled, I think it was supposed to start at 4:30. Maybe something just a different time of year. We got to get off Mount Mitchell sooner.
Yeah, and another thing, November 20th, I think, which is the date. I mean,
it could be snow up there.
There's a good chance Parkway's closed. I mean, that's not surprising if the Parkway would be closed. And then you're on the alternate course, which, I mean, that's a course you want to do the whole thing. You want to see. I mean, you want to see the Black
awesome.
Mountains in their glory. You don't want to do the abbreviated course if you don't have to.
For sure. And even Mount Mitchell this past year was abbreviated due to weather, I believe. Correct?
Right. Yeah. I think they turned it all to the marathon or whatever.
So, I mean, yeah, it happens all the time over there, I'm sure, with up at that altitude and whatnot, weather's flying in and everything. Kind of before we wrap things up, I'm curious to know, what is your guys' biggest failures in running, and how did that shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, I think for me, the first couple like 50Ks and stuff I did, they went relatively well. I mean, I felt awful at the end, just like everybody, but they went pretty well. It wasn't until, at least the way that I felt about it, until I did the first 2 100s, where I felt like, I mean, the placing was still good. It was like, man, I think the first time I did Hellbender, maybe, I don't remember the place, maybe like 18.
You were at 9? Oh yeah.
No,
Top 20, right?
Or 18th. Yeah. The first time I did Grindstone was like 30th. but the races for me were just I felt like they went horrible. I mean, I felt for Grindstone the last 70 miles, I felt like I was going to die. And for Hellbender, like the last 50 miles, I mean, was just, I mean, Eric saw how bad I looked. I was bad. So, man, I learned so much from that. Just that experience. And I feel like once you go to that dark of a place too, it makes it a little less scary. Because like, man, you get more experience. Probably most of the races are going to be a lot better than that. So yeah, for me, that's probably the biggest learning experience. Which the good thing is, I mean, advice to anybody trying to get in 100s, I kind of like expected that. I kind of had a long view about it. Like, man, I know if I want to compete, I need to go get like 3, 4, 5 100s like under my belt. Like, man, there's just a steep learning curve. Like, just because you're a fast runner, you ain't going to go out and crush a 100-mile race. So, good dose of humility too in those first 2 races.
Definitely. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going along with the same thing with Bobby. I just think, you get in these races, you do all this work, and then, it's really hard when you're in it. And I mean, I had a hard time at Grindstone this past year. I just, 30 miles in, I was my family wasn't there. I was out there. I ran most of the race by myself. I just wasn't around other people. And, I was like, I can just kind of quit now and go back and sleep in my tent and nobody's really going to care.
I
And
would have
then,
cared.
yeah, maybe you and a couple of people, but I mean, it's just like life, I mean, I think anything that you do, right, that's hard, it sucks when you're doing it, but then when you come through the other side, you're like appreciative that you went through it. So, whether or not school or work, certain projects I had when I was younger working, they were terrible, then, but you look back on them, you're proud of them a lot more than the ones that were easy. So it's the same thing. I mean, it's just anything worth doing that's hard, stick it out and make it through. But that being said, it's an ultra. It's not that big of a deal. If you want to quit, quit. Nobody cares. I mean, it's up to you. If you're not having fun or if it doesn't mean anything to you to finish, like, I mean, I know people that DNF all the time. It's like whatever. I mean, it's up to you. If that makes you feel good, that's fine. So, I mean, I think Bobby and I are in the same boat where we don't race a ton, so it makes it easier to not give up in some of these races because you're not doing so many. So I think in some ways it's less pressure.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, obviously having someone there to push you and accountability too, to kind of with those races, obviously having someone else out there with you the whole time and just other people being around. I know for me, my friends always give me a little bit of stick if I DNF from a race. So there's always a couple different outside factors that kind of can push you too, even if you're not thinking about it in the moment.
And that's great. I mean, that's that's what you need. I mean, I've done the races I've done. I mean, the first Grindstone, my family was out there, but with 2 little kids, it's hard they can't crew you, like being in the mountains of Virginia it's too hard to get to some of these aid stations. So, and I haven't used a pacer. So, but it's, you get in your head for sure, but you just gotta get out of it. And, I think for me at night times, it's sometimes easier because you're just dealing with the 5 feet in front of you instead of worrying about, what's coming up. Also doing different races. I mean, for me, the second time doing Grindstone, knowing I had to go up Elliott's and that sucky, rocky climb, like mentally, it was hard. I knew what was coming the last 20 miles. I knew it was, where if you're out somewhere on a different race, you don't really know what's coming. Sometimes that can be an advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, a different course, a new course. Obviously, it's always something new to look at. Even if it's just at night, you don't know where you are, kind of lose track of time. Bobby, do you have the same opinions on that? Do you like a same course or a familiar course, or do you like a new course?
Uh, I mean, I think if you're trying to run fast, I think you can run faster on a course you're familiar with. Um, so like I feel like I'm getting more familiar with like the Grindstone course, having run it twice. But I love the idea of going and running a 100-mile race on a course you haven't run, though. I think that's like awesome. First time I did Hellbender, I had only run maybe 20 miles of the course. So that was like super, super cool. But I think for times, you're probably better off knowing the climbs and the descents and all that stuff.
Definitely, definitely. Well, we really appreciate you guys joining us tonight for our Ridge Runners live show. We had a blast hearing your stories and all the experiences that you guys have really grown into who you are today. Just a reminder, everyone, that you can catch us live on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, or you can take us on the go via Apple Podcasts. If you know anyone, if you have anyone who you think would be a great guest for the show, drop their name in the comment, nominate them below, and just like Eric and Bobby were, we'll get them on. Thank you both again, and we'll see you guys soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate you having us on, and I always enjoy following the rundown and showing us about races we didn't know about and getting people on that we're exposed to. So it's a good show. I'm glad what you guys are doing, and anything I can do to help you guys out, let me know.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it.